to the norms. So I realized that for some reason in me, there was something that just didn't want to conform to the norms. One of the norms that I grew up with was a mother who was ashamed of who she was. She was Native American and white. She came from South Carolina, and she left here vowing to never return to live here. And we did return oftentimes, but only to visit. This area is where my ancestors came from. If you look around, you see names like Waccamaw, Petey, Santee, Edisto. These river names that you see all around you. They are the names that have been here since the first time Europeans landed. And that was 500 years ago almost. So our people were engaged, and I have this theory, and I think it's kind of appropriate today to share. The word Winya is actually a Lakota Siouan word, which means women. But there's not any kind of evidence that that's what that word came from, because it was a European word given to the people that they encountered about 500 years ago. So I have this theory. The women would oftentimes work on the shore, collecting shellfish, washing, doing things that they were doing to support their community, their village. And as maybe these boats came in and landed, Spanish that came in, they encountered the women. So in theory, these men might have stepped off the boat, encountered the women, and said, "What are you? What are you?" Meaning, what are you? What people are you? And the women said, "Winyang." You can't see that. Maybe they thought they'd never seen a woman before. So they needed to identify. This species doesn't know what a woman is, so Winyang. And in theory, that might fit. It's an interesting posit to actually look at, because we're women and we're so powerful and have so many things that we can accomplish. So what I kind of thought about when I was really not having too much time to prepare for this, I'm dealing with a personal issue. My 20-year-old son has testicular cancer, and that's my new fight now. But I thought about, what is it that inspires people to be at something like this? Now, there's different reasons that you're here, different purposes, different issues, kind of the same issues. You're all looking for one thing. You're looking for justice, social justice. You see wrongs, and it inspires you. And it might be your own personal experiences that brought you here, but it might be vision. But in any sense, it's a purpose, and that purpose for each one might be just slightly different, but it brings us together in unity to fight. And it might be that my purpose is slightly different than yours or my reason, but we're here to do the same thing. We would like to see a better society. We'd like to see equality. And equality has been fought for so long, and it's women that have led the way when they've seen things that are wrong. You see things that are wrong in society, you stand up, you say, this is a problem, this is not right. And I think that motivates us so much that we're willing to take risks. So many women in the past have risked a lot more than we are today gathering here. They've risked their lives. They've risked being burned at the stake and being called a heretic. We don't have that today. So we're really in a different age. We can really be grateful and thankful. There's still many, many issues. It doesn't discredit or discount what's going on today with women. Women that are being abducted, Native American women, they are raped more, domestic violence, and when it comes to the things that happen to women, for some reason, Native American women, there's an inequality there for what happens. And that doesn't discount, again, what happens to women overall. But what I'm saying, I think, in theory, that it's because there was a giving up of so much of the culture. And I look at my mother who's passed on. I look at her life, and I say she grew up until 71 being ashamed of who she was. Now, she might not have been she wasn't ashamed necessarily of being a woman, but she was ashamed of who she was as a person. And that really presses you down. It keeps you from saying, I can stand up and do something different. And maybe that's what inspired me, because I didn't understand that. It was a generation that she lived in, and I didn't have to. So I'm asking each one of you to think about what it is inspiring you to be here. And I don't want to say that it's just women that are here. There's plenty of men that have stood behind women and realized and supported causes that they also agree. These things need to change. We all know one of the major things that need to change in this country. I won't go there. So here's close to home what we as Native Americans would like to change. So I'm reading this story about a time and era where Native American remains were actually a commodity. You got $20 for skeletal remains, $5 for a skull. So grave robbing was actually kind of a, it was an art. They had to figure out how they could get to the place where these remains were, get in without getting shot, and take the remains. Now this was just 150 years ago. There's been some changes. Indian Graves Repatriation Act was put in place. Well, here in Myrtle Beach, I'm Waccamaw Indian. Waccamaw Indians were here. Not too far from here, it was, I believe there was a burial site. I won't go into what is presently located on that site, but it is in the city of Myrtle Beach. There's additional areas where it's known Indian remains, Indian grave, and actually one area that the word actually means a place of great weeping, and an archaeological dig was done to confirm there were remains, and this was an Indian burial ground. So now it is a beautiful plantation home estate with a golf course. Those remains ended up being taken and placed in the care of the state archaeologists and in museums, and we cannot repatriate them. Now that doesn't sound like, they're dead people, okay? But let me ask you this, if your ancestors were dug up and kept in museums, maybe even on display, would it kind of just incite you to do something? So 25 years now, we're in the future, that this issue's been addressed, it's attention to, and we're still fighting to get those remains returned so that we can rebury them properly with the proper Native American ceremony. It's one of the issues. There's so many issues with Native Americans. Obviously, we're keepers of the land. So we see things that are going on just on our coast, offshore drilling. Some of the things that are happening there, you just, if you understood that drilling is just such a detriment to this area, to the economy, and besides that, there's known chemical weapons that have been dumped into, we're not too sure where that area is, but it's off the East Coast, and it's quite a bit off the coast of South Carolina. And blasting might not be a good idea, because these are chemical weapons. So you do this blasting, and we got to do it because we need to compete. No. Everything in this society, everything I've learned about history, is that it's been about promoting power for the ones that have the power. The ones that don't, you just don't have a voice. So today we're here to have a voice, to have a say, to be able to make some changes, whatever that may be. And I don't have to agree with every single thing, but I can be here to say, yeah, I stand alongside my sister and my brother to fight. And I don't have to be of the same race to stand alongside my brother and my sister to fight, to change, because it's all about seeing what's wrong and saying and having a voice. That is what's so important, and I'm thankful that everybody's here today. I'm thankful that you've taken the time out of your Saturday morning to come out and say, hey, this is important to me. And the one thing in history, and I will say this because I see this sign and it keeps sticking out, truth matters. There's so much about history from this area where you will learn, well, it just kind of began around, let's say, the 1800s. That's not the truth. Earlier last year, I received an email that said that the South Carolina Department of Education was going to stop teaching about the Native Americans of the area because of the lack of significance in history. So again, when you see something and you're saying, well, that's not the truth, you stand up. So what I have made it my goal is to teach about the truth of history. Many people here today, and I don't say anything against it. What you've learned is what you've learned because that's what's been given to you as truth. Native Americans were some of the first slaves taken off of the coast, Winyah, in that area, about 150, taken down to the West Indies to work on the sugarcane plantations. It was very common for Native Americans to be captured, ported out of Charleston, sent over to the West Indies, sent up to the Massachusetts colony. So much so that in 1721, Massachusetts said, we are prohibiting any more South Carolina Indians being brought into Massachusetts colony to be sold into slavery. Not really exactly sure why they did that, but the truth of the matter is they did. The slavery of Native Americans continued, but there was a manipulation in how they could continue doing that. In essence, the economy and everything was built based on what we have been taught is a false sense of the truth. And on the backs of people that weren't given a choice. And again, that's probably the line where women, Native Americans, African Americans, and those that I call people that have had to live on the fringe of society without a voice, that is where we unite. So asking everybody here today, you don't have to agree with me on all the issues. I don't have to agree with you on all the issues. But certainly we can come together and unite. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Cheryl. Let's give it up for Cheryl.
Thank you, that was great.
I learned a lot.
Really good to
How
meet
about
you.
y'all? That was great. Okay.